Okay, so just so you know, this is being recorded. So welcome everyone. I can't believe it's New Year's and here we are starting our second series. Happy New Year. Zentangle, as you know, and we have some new tanglers with us today, so I'll do a little bit more explaining than maybe I normally would, just to give context and background and make sure that we're all on the same page. Zentangle is a meditative art form that is more about the process of creating the tile, the surface that we're working on, than the product. Although, usually we end up with something very, very beautiful at the end, but we're focusing on how we're feeling while we're creating the tile. And everything that I'm going to show you tonight is, I think I said this already, is just a jumping off point for your own creativity. So your tile may end up looking completely different from mine, and that's great. So follow along, and if you have questions along the way, feel free to unmute, but otherwise we're going to use this as some quiet, introspective time. So we're going to begin. I'm going to turn my laptop on focus, so hopefully we won't get any more dings and bings. Okay, and if you want to go ahead and do the same, you can. So let's come to a comfortable position for a little meditation and breathing before we dive in. Go ahead and close your eyes. You can place your feet on the floor, hands in your lap or on the tops of your thighs. And then let's just begin with a few deep breaths in through the nose, which I can't do right now, and out through the mouth. Again, a deep breath in and out. Another breath in and another breath out. And I'd like you to start at the top of your head and check in with your body, relaxing your forehead, your eyes, your cheeks, your mouth, your chin and neck. If you want to do a couple of head rolls, go ahead and roll your neck around gently in one direction and then the next. If you care to, roll your shoulders up and back for a few circles, and then maybe up and forward in the opposite direction. Check in with your torso if you'd like to do just a little bit of movement there, or take a twist in your chair and reach to your left and look over your left shoulder and release back to center. Twist to the right, look over your right shoulder. Maybe get a little back crack in there. And wiggle your legs around, relax your glutes and your thighs. And do some leg shakes, or just kind of roll your ankles, which will get your whole leg moving a bit. If your shoes are off, wiggle your toes. Just send some love to the parts of your body that have been holding tension. And as you do that, think about the day. Think about the good things that happened today. Something that you want to remember and hold on to because it was sweet, lovely, pleasant. And think about something that was less wonderful today. Hold it, give it space. And then when you're ready, let it go. You don't need it in this space this evening. With the next breath in, I invite you to set an intention, whether it be creativity or pushing yourself to try something new, or self-compassion, or non-judgment. Find your intention for our practice this evening. Call it to mind and we'll come back to it along the way. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and we'll begin. So the one thing you'll notice that we don't have amongst our tools in front of us is an eraser, although there is one on the back of this chalk pencil, but we're not going to use it. Zentangle is about making the most beautiful thing that you can out of whatever happens. Just like life, we don't always get to be in control, and so our job is just how we react to the things that come our way, and can we do so with grace and patience and kindness and love. So I want you to hold all of those things for yourself, because I promise you there'll be a moment tonight on this tile when you're like, ugh, or you say yuck or oops or whatever, but there is no such thing in Zentangle. We're just gonna go with it and say, oh, that's interesting, and then move forward. So with that, I'm going to move my tools aside and just begin with my Zentangle pencil. And as you can see, this is a blank tile. We call what we draw on a tile. Some are square, some are round, some are rectangular, some are translucent. This one is gray. You might have a white one in front of you. And the first step in the Zentangle method, after a little meditation and gratitude and appreciation, is creating our string. So a string is just a guideline. It's just so that we no longer have a blank tile in front of us. So our string tonight is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive circles that kind of grow out from the bottom to the top, but you're not going to use anything to trace. We're just going to freehand. Don't worry about making it perfect. It's just a guideline. So we're going to start with our smallest circle at the very bottom of our tile. And maybe it's a little bit bigger than a quarter. And I'm just lightly sketching that first circle. At the very bottom, it just kind of sits at the edge there. Okay, and I shouldn't even call it a circle. We're just going to call it an orb because it doesn't have to be perfectly round. It's fine if it's not. Okay, so then the next one is going to start from that same point at the bottom. It's going to be close to about an inch at its thickest point, like its distance from that first one that we drew. And then it's going to come back down and meet at the bottom edge again. Mine kind of fell off the end. That's fine. And you see, it's not perfectly circular, but that's okay. Okay, and then we're going to make another one that grows out from the same place. That's about an inch, maybe a little bit more at its thickest point. And then comes back down. Okay, so we've got 2 more to draw, so just kind of gauge how much space we're going to take up. So again, we're going to start at same place. And another one's going to come around like this. I'm making mine a little darker so that you can see them clearly. And I'm going to make one more that's just going to divide this last space in half. So really don't worry if they're not perfect circles. We're just dividing up the spaces on our tile, and I promise we will never see these lines when we're done. All right. So once you've done that, you can set your pencil aside and you can pick up your black pen, whichever one you're using, the PN, the Apprentice, O1, whatever you got. And by the way, this tile that we're doing tonight is based on the newest Zentangle project pack. They do every year for many years, the 12 days of Zentangle leading up to Christmas. They usually come out with new tools and new tiles and things like that. So this was one of the videos. I didn't go in order. So they actually in the pack had a pre-strung tile that had this kind of a pattern on it, but I just freehanded it because I didn't have the project pack yet. And then I'm doing some of the same tangles that they did in the video, but then I went rogue and changed it up. So I invite you to do the same. But I just wanted to give credit where credit was due, that this is based on a project tutorial that came out of the Zentangle headquarters. So we're going to start with a tangle called Sand Swirl. I'll show you on the back of my tile. And by the way, the back of your tile is a great place to practice, to learn and to just try things out. So I like to put my pen cap on the back of my pen. Sand Swirl is just a little loop that comes, let's see, does it come up this way? Yeah. Comes up and around. So you just make a little loop at the top and curve around and down. And then we're going to aura that shape. So I'm starting on the line that I already created, and then I'm going to go around what I just drew with another loop. And we're just going to do that a few times. And the number of times you go around may vary. Okay, maybe one more. So that's a sand swirl. That's a basic idea. And they can go in all different directions, and they kind of grow in and out of each other, and fall underneath and behind and whatnot. So that's sand swirl. So now let's go back. And we're going to start a sand swirl on this very outer edge, this outermost section. And our sand swirl is going to stop when we get to about halfway up the top. This is a little section, so we're not going to be afraid to go over. You can overlap your line and go into the next section, especially down here at the bottom, because it's very, very tight. So I'm going to start with just a little one. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze first. Maybe. Okay, excuse me. So we're going to start with a little sand swirl. I'm trying to figure out where's a good place to start. I'm going to start right down here. I just made that little, I actually went from the bottom up that time. It's hard to see there. You see that? All right, and then I'm going to aura. Coming around this way. It's going to fall off the paper, that's fine. And I'm just going to do one more loop around. Like that. All right. So then, and look, I just went over most of those lines there, so don't worry about that at all. I'm going to make another one now that's going in the opposite direction, so it's going to curl up around to the left. And you can start from the loop at the top, or you can start from the bottom up. I seem to be starting from the bottom up. Okay, and then your aura, that shape. And don't be concerned if it goes off the page, just kind of let it happen. Okay, and then we're gonna keep going with another one. Let's try for maybe this one comes up and around this way, kind of lands on the line there. So that one's sort of upside down. So I'm using this line here as its sort of stopping point, but I'm still overlapping the other ones for right now. Once we have a little bit more room, then we'll stay within the lines a little bit more. But right now it's still kind of tight. Okay, we're going to keep going, making our way up this space with our sand swirl. And by the way, this newest project pack is all based on, is an homage to the spiral. So you can see that even though this isn't a spiral, it's has a spiral look to it. And I'm varying how many times I aura this shape just to fill the space in different ways. So I'm going to do another one that kind of goes in this direction now. And when you meet up with a sand swirl you've already drawn, you just kind of lift your pen, imagine where it would, where you would continue drawing if it were underneath, and then you put your pen back to the paper and pick up where you left off. Another great thing about these, all of the Zentangle tiles, but the round ones in particular, feel free to turn your tile to keep your drawing hand comfortable. It's small enough that you can just move it any way you need to. Just keep in mind, if you're going faster than me, we're just going to go about halfway around this this stripe. Let's see, which way do I want to go now? Take your time, slow and steady. Enjoy the repetition of that shape. Remember your intention. Remember to breathe. Sometimes, we're sort of aiming for uniformity between the lines, each of the auras, but sometimes they get away from us, and that's okay. Okay, I'm going to do one more, I think, and then I'm going to stop in this section. Okay, and I want to stick one more right in this little spot here. All right, so we have something like that. Now I'm going to pick up my brown, my brown 01, so my other pen that looks like this, but it's brown. If you don't have one, just stick with the black, or if you have a different color 01 that you want to use, but black is also fine. And we're going to work now. So we're going to skip this section here, and we're going to work in this one right here. So we're going to do a tangle called poke root, which I will show you. Many of you know poke root. It's one of my favorites. You could do poke root or poke leaf. They're variations. I will show you what they look like. So poke root starts with a curved little line, and then that little line gets an aura, so one that goes right next to it, following along. Then it gets a little cap, like a curved little frown on top of those two lines, and then a big circular berry shape that gets put on top. So I start them on the left side of the stem and come up and around that little cap and come down on the right. If you want to start on the right and go around to the left, that's totally fine. And then the great thing about these poke root is that they can grow out of each other. So you can curve in the opposite direction if you want to, with your two parallel lines, your little cap on top, then your berry that sits on top. They can overlap and kind of fall one behind the other. And you can squeeze them into all kinds of fun little places. The stems can be shorter. Okay, so you can see how they kind of grow in these cute little clumps. And poke leaf is the same basic idea. So a little stem with a cap, and then instead of the big round berry, it's kind of like an upside down heart shape, like a leaf that comes to a point on the top and then comes back down. So it's like making an upside down heart around that stem, like that. Okay, so you could mix and match. You could do all one or all the other, or you could do something totally different, up to you. So we're going to do poke root or poke leaf in this section, again, only about halfway. We're not going to fill the whole thing. And I'm just going to start here, right growing out of my little
off screen, Micah.
Sorry. Right here. Using this as an anchor, that sand swirl. And don't be afraid to draw behind the sand swirl. It's really fun to kind of layer. And also, don't be afraid to go out of the lines. You can deviate from the string that we laid down. Don't completely obliterate the other section, but don't be afraid to encroach on it a little bit. And you can play around. Maybe some of your poke root have really long stems and they've gotten really out of control. And then the other ones are trying to catch up and kind of falling behind. All kinds of crazy things can happen. You know, nature is not organized. It doesn't color inside the lines. So just have fun. Okay, don't forget to stop, leaving some room. I'm saying that as much for myself as for you. You can see I'm kind of just like looking at my tiles, see if I want to add just a couple more peeking out from the sides. We talk often about what we call zhuzhing. So if you want to go back in and add some extra love and attention to any little part of your poke leaf or poke root, whatever you decided to draw, I like to just add a little extra ink, like a little dimple on those caps. The brown pen is cool because the more ink you layer on, the kind of darker it gets. So that's a nice effect if you have the brown. I'm going to give you another minute to work on that. I'm a speedy poke root tangler, so I may be done before you are. I like to go around the outside of poke root too, kind of weight the corners a little bit. If we have time, we'll go back in and color in the interstices, the little spaces between as well. So we're going to go back now to our black. And we're going to fill half of this section. So again, we're going to skip this one. We're going to go to this one. And we're going to put another little bit of sand swirl. So just the same as this one in about half of this section right here. So not the whole thing, but just another little half. So I switched pens.
Can you move your tile up a little bit, please?
Yep,
Thank you.
sorry. I always fall off the end. Same idea, just back to that little sand swirl. Just come back to your intention. Maybe your mind is wandering. Maybe you're not totally happy with your tile right now. Try to let that go. Just go with the flow, be in the moment. Okay, I'm gonna stop myself. Very easy to get carried away and just swirl into oblivion. Okay, so I'm gonna cap my black and I'm going to pick up my Jelly Roll pen. Mine is purple, yours is probably a different color. We're going to use this to divide up some of the rest of these bands so we can put another pattern inside. So just watch me for a second. And if you are tangling on a tabletop, you might want to put like a scrap piece of paper underneath because I tend to end up with pen on the table as well when I do this. We're going to go off a little bit. So we're going to just start with these bands. So I'm going to, oh, and you might want to turn your tile over and get your jelly roll going. Sometimes they take a minute to get warmed up. And the trick with these is if you hold them more upright and have a very light touch, they tend to flow better. You do occasionally get a bum one, so I'm sorry if one of yours does not work. We had this, we taught an in-person class a while ago, and about 4 or 5 of them were like, this doesn't work. Okay, if for some reason your jelly roll doesn't work, you can lick it. Sometimes that works. Sometimes I gently kind of tap the tip on the paper, or if it's really not doing anything, just go back to your black or brown pen. But hopefully yours are all good. Okay, so I'm going to start with just a line that divides up this space. And I'm just going to give it, it's just going to flare out a little bit at the bottom and a little bit at the top, like just a tiny little detail of flaring to the outside. And then I'm going to aura it like that. And that same little foot that kind of sticks out on the bottom. So it, in opposite directions. It's just a subtle little thing. If you just want to make 2 parallel lines, that's fine too. Okay, then I'm going to go about an inch away. And I'm going to make another one of those lines. And parallel aura with the little foot at the bottom. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to put those lines intermittently all the way down the rest of this section. So I'm all the way up at the top, continuing that section that we put that first sand swirl pattern in. And I'm creating a space that's roughly about an inch. I'm just giving you that as a point of reference because we're going to put a fragment inside. I'm so sorry, I'm so stuffed up. Obviously, these lines are getting shorter as you get around towards the edge. That's how it's going to go. So we have something like that. Okay, and once you've done that in this section, you're going to skip this empty one that we haven't done anything in. And we're going to do the same thing in this section. That's the continuation of where our poke root was. So skip here, and then continue to do the same thing in this section down here. We're also going to do it one more time. Excuse me. In this last little section where we just did the second set of sand swirl. And you can start, if you want to, you could start one of these that kind of goes behind. If yours kind of had one hanging out there like mine did. It already gives this tile some nice motion, like cogs in a clock or a watch or something. It's interesting. So once you're done with that, we're going to cap our jelly roll and go back to our brown micron if you have it. Otherwise, go to black, or you could even play around. You could do what the next segment that we're going to do in the same jelly roll if you wanted to. That would also work. Or if you had some other color you wanted to try, you could do that as well. So again, these are just guidelines to spark your creativity, get you going. So we're going to put a fragment, another pattern inside this reticula, these segments that we've just created. So I have this kind of a half space here. I'm going to leave that alone for right now, just so I can show you the full pattern. So for this one, I'm going to go from the top left corner here and down to the bottom right with a kind of like actually I'm going to draw it from the bottom up because that's what feels comfortable for me. But if you top to bottom or bottom to top, a gently curving line like that. So like I sort of made the letter N. Okay, and then we're going to aura that curved line all the way down to the corner. And then on the other side of this curved line that we just drew, we're going to make this little ladybug sort of crescent shape. It's sort of a backwards C that sits on top, and then we're going to color that in. And then we're going to aura that little ladybug. It's like a crescent moon. And we're going to fill the whole rest of the space with these radiating sort of rainbow lines. So that's the pattern. We're going to mirror it in this next one. We're going to try to remember to flip back and forth. So this one I went from top left to bottom right. On this one, I'm going to go from top right to bottom left. Auraing that line down to the bottom right corner, filling that space there. Oops, sorry. Then making my little crescent shape and coloring it in. And then auraing the ladybug. And again, I'm sort of drawing off the paper as I go towards the edges. So we're going to go back and forth. So now that I know where we're going, I can go back and say, okay, I'm going top right to bottom left on this one. I just didn't have the whole, I just have to imagine where the bottom left is. And then fill in there. I can imagine, maybe there's a little bit of that ladybug that's showing. It's just sort of a nod to the pattern peeking through, and you can see it kind of looks like sand swirl. Is it sand swirl? Is it this other pattern that we're doing? It's kind of cool. Okay, so we're just going to keep going, filling this space, trying to remember to mirror. If you mess up, it's not a mess up. If you just don't mirror, that's fine. If there's one wonky one, like just go with it. Sometimes that little bit of humanity is what makes a piece special. Remember your intention. Focus on your breathing, relax your grip on your pen. As the sections get smaller, you have to kind of imagine how the space would fill if it were the whole area. So in these little tiny pieces, it's just kind of a hint of what the whole pattern would be. So when you finish that top section, you're going to go to your middle one here and do the same thing. You could mix up the order of the patterns, or you could try to match what you've done up top. Either way, I leave it up to you. I'm staying with the same color pen, but maybe you want to try a different color or try a different pattern even. Feel free to improvise and riff on the idea. And the longer you practice Zentangle, the more patterns you'll know and say, you know, oh, well, I don't really like that pattern so much, or, you know, that's not my favorite. I'm going to do this instead. And that's what I did when I was playing with this tile earlier this week. And I was like, well, I think this would look nice here. I'm going to try this instead. And I'm turning my tile back and forth each time I go to a different section so that my hand can draw those gently curving lines in a way that allows it to be more consistent because my hand is in the same position. All right, and then we're going to do that same thing in this last little section down here. Okay, so we should have something that looks roughly like that. give you another minute or two to finish that, and then we're gonna go on to what's gonna happen in these sections. If you are done and want something to do, I like to color in these little I don't even know what to call them, droplets, like the little centers of the sand swirl. I'm all in favor of the more ink, the merrier. So any opportunity to put more ink on the paper, I'm usually doing it. All right, so let's cap our pens. And if any of this, if I'm going quickly for you, if you've got the pattern started, you know how to finish it. So you can always come back and fill in afterwards. So don't worry too much if you're not done and we're, heading off to the next step. So I'm picking up my chalk pencil, which hopefully you have. If you don't, you could try this with just a regular pencil, just a graphite pencil. We're going to do a pattern that's hopefully going to be a little bit in the background. And so we're going to use the pencil as sort of a lighter touch. So as I said, this project pack was all about spirals. So we're going to do the original Zentangle pattern spiral called Printemps, which is a play on words because spring in French is printemps, but what does a spring look like? It's like a coil. So they're very witty, those Zentangle people. So printemps is just a spiral. So just like that, I go clockwise, but you could go counterclockwise, but whatever you do, just try to be consistent with it. And these spirals can kind of overlap and fall behind one another. They kind of nestle in with one another. They can be big or small. They can be all different sizes. So we're going to do a whole bunch of printemps in each of these 3 remaining segments. However, if you are a seasoned tangler and you have different ideas about different patterns you might want to put in these sections, you feel free to mix it up. I did some with flux. You could do, I don't know, in Zeppel or, any number of different tangles. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're going to go ahead and do printemps with me. All right, so I'm going to start here. I will go back and fill this little section down here, but I want to be able to put a bigger spiral right in this spot. So I'm with my jelly roll pencil. I'm sorry, not my jelly roll, my chalk pencil. And then I'm going to go back and fill in here with some smaller ones. Just wanted to get going. It's kind of a hint of a spiral back there. And I like to play around with the placement so that they don't just end up all in a row. There's some variation in how the printemps pattern kind of unfolds.
Micah, are we filling all the way across or
Yep.
just half?
Nope, we're gonna go all the way. The chalk pencil, will smudge a little bit. So I'm a lefty. I have to be kind of aware of dragging my hand across the tile. So I'm just going to try to keep my hand off where I just have drawn with the chalk pencil because it is a little bit, it will rub. That's why turning the tile is great. Okay, so we're going to fill the remaining sections with printemps or another tangle of your choice if you have some in your tangling repertoire. Staying with the chalk pencil or whatever tool you have chosen. Okay, and I'm going to do my last little, that original orb that we made right at the very beginning. All right. another minute to work on this step. I want to make sure we have time to get to some shading because it's going to make the tile pop and come to life. All right, so I'm going to go back to my Zentangle pencil where it all began. And we're going to start by shading our sand swirl. And we're going to lay down the graphite first and then use our tortillon to blend it. So I'm going to start by going along that inner line that we first made. So each one of those, I'm going to lay down a pretty nice layer of graphite. I'm just going to do the first section that we did to start, but we'll do all of them. I just want to show you. So I did that. And then I also want to go around the tops of them. So that'll mean that we're going to shade over some of our other patterns that we created, but that's okay. We're just bringing this to the forefront and sending some of those other patterns a little bit back. Really gives dimensionality. And it's nice. It's kind of sort of releasing. We don't have to worry about like where's the light source coming from. We're just shading the pattern. We're not shading anything that needs to be realistic. Sometimes I make little circles with the graphite pencil to sort of lay down as much as I want. I use sort of the side of my pencil instead of the tip to get a sort of softer look. I guess while we're here, we can shade the other section. And again, we're still just laying down graphite at this point. We're going to go back and blend it in a moment. Don't be afraid of the graphite. Sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, I'm drawing on top of this beautiful thing that I spent an hour working on. It will be worth it. I'm going pretty heavy-handed, but you can always, if you're feeling a little nervous, you can start light and go back and add more. All right. So already you can see it's starting to come to life, but it could use a little nuance. So I'm going to go back with my tortillon, and I'm just going to gently blend that pencil that I put down. So you want to leave it darkest, closest to that outside line of the sand swirl in this case, and I'm just kind of pulling it out into the other patterns just ever so slightly. We want variation, we want gradation from dark to light, and we don't want to make the whole thing gray. So we're just kind of go in and create some gentle fading. And again, I'm making little circles with my tortillon to blend the graphite. I'm using the side of the tortillon. If you press too hard, the tip will collapse in on itself. So go gently to extend the life of these. I'm seeing a few places where I forgot to put graphite. I have enough of it on my tortillon now. I can just go in and you add some with what's on the tortillon. You could always pick up your pencil again too if you wanted, but I'm being lazy. Okay, next I want to continue shading with the graphite pencil. I want to go on either side of these bars that we made. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm just going to lay down a nice layer of graphite. I'm going to put a little bit along that curved dividing line that we made. I'm going to do that on all of those segments. Could do some along the bottom edge too, where it meets up with the our pencil our pencil printemps. Give it a little definition there too if you want. I'm gonna do the same on the other ones. Oh, I usually go in the order. I usually shade in the order that I draw, but I forgot poke root. We'll come back and catch that in a second. And I'll do it on this last section here. Okay, when you feel like you have enough graphite, you could go back in with the tortillon and do some blending. Again, being careful not to just make the whole thing gray, but bringing some dark to light. Just remind you again of your intention and to keep your focus. Maybe you're getting tired. Maybe your hand is a little tired. Relax your grip. Okay, we're going to do just a little bit of shading on poke root. I like to just add like a little sort of a upside down smile. It's not touching the outside, the top edge. It's kind of just inside. Just a little curved line that when we blend it, it'll just give a nice little roundness. Like I said, if we had a little bit more time, I'd go in and fill the background in, the interstices. Maybe you want to do that on your own, but I want to make sure we have time to finish and do our mosaic together. If you want to add a little shading on the outside too, like where it meets the chalk pencil crown tone, that'll help it stand out a little bit too. But coloring in the background will definitely do that. So I would encourage you to go back.
What would you color it with?
I'd probably, good question. Thank you for asking. I would probably go back in with the brown. If you drew it with brown, I would go back in with brown. Although it'd be a fun experiment to see, does it look good in the jelly roll color or black or. So I'm just gently shading these little curved lines that I put in here. If you had a white chalk pencil, which many of you have, you could add a highlight to this light unshaded part of the sand swirl. So we have something like this. The final steps of the Zentangle method are now we're gonna put our chop, something that identifies this tile as ours, on the front of the tile. So I'm gonna go back with my, what do I want to use? I'm gonna use my brown. It could be a symbol, it could be your initials, it could be a letter. I usually just put an M on the front. You find a little spot for it, really anywhere you like. I'm gonna tuck my M right up in here. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put the date. Today's the 3rd, 2024. I'm going to put my name. And I'm going to write Zentangle with TS, double Sinai. And maybe if you wanted to write what your intention was, or if you wanted to write the names of the tangles that we did. This one was Sand Swirl. This one was Printemps. This one was Poke Root or Poke Leaf. And when you're ready, first for yourself, hold it up at arm's length and hold it out and look at it from a little bit of a distance. And then I'm going to take my pin off, if you wouldn't mind. Then everyone can hold their tile up to their camera so that we can have our mosaic. You could, if you put yours on gallery view, if you put your Zoom on gallery view, then you'll be able to see everyone's up close. And this is the last step of our Zentangle method, is putting all of our artwork together. We end up with something even more beautiful than one of them on their own. These are fantastic. Oh, how beautiful. For our newcomers, I'm curious, how did you find it? Was it challenging? Was it relaxing? Go ahead and unmute. I'd love to know. Was it frustrating? Did you hate it?
Hi, this is Tamra. Hi.
Hi there.
It reminded me that when I was young, I used to fill books with geometric patterns and colors, and I loved it. And I haven't done that in decades, so I had a blast. Thank you.
Oh, so glad. That's wonderful. Yeah, this is, I mean, I don't like to call it this, but it, it's mindful doodling, but we use the patterns and we use this practice as a way to get into a good headspace. So it's wonderful.
I love doing the circles. We don't usually do, it's more like sections. But
Yeah.
this was so cool. Gave it like a whole different feel.
Yeah, and it has a nice movement to it. I liked this tile because it had a lot of movement. This was the practice one that I did. I had this green pen, that I played with, and you could see I did different patterns in between. So, and I used some different colored chalk pencils, but I wanted to sort of simplify and streamline it. So, but I like
Michael, what's the point of the chalk pencil? Oh, is it just a different texture?
Yeah, these colored ones that we had. Yeah, they blend really nicely. I think, yeah, there's just another tool and another texture. So, and if you don't love them, you don't have to use them again, but it's just something fun to play with. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm running off to a Ruach rehearsal now.
Thank you. Feel better.
Thank you.
I better say hi to my brother.
Feel better. Thank you.
Have a great night. See you next week, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.